dearly beloved students. Today we'll be looking at the subject government, and in government we'll be looking at the rule of law. Time may not permit us to address beyond the three specific objectives that have been clearly spelled out on the board. Without much ado, let's just look at these very key or gray areas of discuss today. Alright, by the end of this lesson, students should be able to define the rule of law, pardon the omission of that, discuss the three basic interpretations of the rule of law, state the problems of maintaining the rule of law. Now, the topic in discuss today is partly entrenched in the SS1 curriculum. Thus far, we've significantly or considerably attended to most of the topics in SS1. However, we have just 2-3 topics left to conclude the SS1 work, okay, in view of my preparation for the WAEC. Now, when we say the rule of law, what do we mean? The rule of law has been subjectively defined. It has been different definitions have been brought to fore with respect to what it entails. However, Albert Venn Dicey, okay, a constitutional lawyer, a British jurist, and an academic, he gave a unifying definition that we'll be working with. We'll see the rule of law in a very simple sense. The rule of law is simply defined as the supremacy of the Constitution, the supremacy of the Constitution over a group of people within a political entity, over a group of people within a political entity, meaning the governed, okay, and the elect, they are subject to the whims and caprices of the law. Their actions must conform to the dictates of the Constitution. The constitutional framework, okay, must guide their actions. Now, this is very necessary to call what we call dictatorship, a system of government where the elect, okay, the political office holders, they tend to wear that totalitarian nature, okay, and do things the way they so desire. When such is actually perceived inside, we refer to such a system, or we refer to such a political entity where that system is operational, to experience what we call anarchy or chaos. So when we say the rule of law, we're actually talking about the supremacy of the Constitution over everyone within a defined political entity, Now, as was rightly established, when we want to provide in context the narrative account of the foundational concept of the rule of law, the person that comes to mind is Albert Venn Dicey. He popularized the concept, the rule of law, in 1885. Now, he is actually one of the key contributors of the constitutional framework that is actually upheld even beyond the frontiers of the Britain, as it were. Okay, it has become a universal concept, and it has been adopted by several international organizations, the likes of the United Nations. Okay, now the rule, okay, of the law, the rule of the Constitution, the rule of law, okay, is clearly stipulated as thus that everyone must be subject to the law, regardless of the position you assume. Everyone must be subject to the law. Okay, now supposing a political office holder, okay, does something that is against the Constitution, the sanction he or she is to face, okay, the sanction he or she is to face must be, the sanction must be faced, okay, if a common man does something, okay. Now, let's assume the act in question is same. The act of disobedience, the act of civil disobedience is the same, and the sanction has been clearly spelled out in the Constitution. Okay. Now, same sanction that is accorded the common man or the ordinary man, same sanction is to be accorded the political office holder. Now, it is meant to be so because they're all citizens. They are first citizens before the assumption of any political office. All right. Now, quickly, let's just attend to the basic interpretations of the rule of law. Okay, the basic interpretations of the rule of law. Now, the rule of law is it's premised on three pillars. It's premised on three pillars. We have the principle of equality. Equality, I've briefly talked about that. Equality. Everyone is equal before the law. Everyone is equal before the law. Okay. What is to be accorded Mr. A is to be accorded Mr. B. Okay. The law, as the law has been clearly entrenched in the Constitution, as provided as contained in the Constitution. Okay. Same that is applicable to Mr. A is also applicable to Mr. B. For example, social vices. Okay. For example, it's during the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, a law was passed after it went through the several stages in the legislative the legislative houses at the federal level, okay, the upper and the lower chamber. Okay, it passed a law that smoking, okay, it's highly prohibited in public environments, and such persons found delving into such actions, okay, will be arrested, apprehended, and they will serve for a particular time. Okay, now if an ordinary man is caught violating the law or the constitution, okay, the law stands. If a political office holder is found violating the law in a proper democratic setting, in a sane political climb, okay, such, okay, must those set of persons in question must face the law. Okay, nobody becomes um, above the law. Nobody wears that superior cloth when it comes to the law. So I may not dwell much on that, considering the limited time or considering the time constraint. Okay, let's look at the second. We've talked about the principle of equality. The second is the principle of impartiality. Now, in Nigeria, morality is almost a lost language. Okay, what we perceived as a daily practice is systemic corruption. Okay, where we see persons who wear certain classes. It could be a political class kind of cloth. It could be an economic class kind of cloth. Okay, it could be a social class kind of cloth. Okay, that is one. These persons tend to experience what we call immunity. These persons tend to experience what we call exemption. Okay, the law tends to bear that prejudiced outlook when it comes to them. The law, not necessarily the law itself, but the persons who wield the state, the persons who control the law, which is not meant to be. And when corruption is actually seen from now, John C. Maxwell, okay, popularized a concept when the head is faulty, it affects the body. Now, this is in a paraphrased form. When the head is faulty, it affects the body. So, in a nutshell, since the persons at the helm of affairs are driven by self-interest, okay, it is manifested in their sense of judgment. It is manifested in their demonstration of justice, which is not meant to be. Okay, so impartiality, we say principle of these are the three pillars, and these three pillars are universally upheld by the United Nations. Okay, by the United Nations. So quickly, let's just attend to them. So we've talked about the principle of impartiality. Okay, we've also talked about the principle of equality. Then the last is fundamental human rights. Humans, by virtue of nature, we have certain rights that are part of us. It cannot be separated from us. Oftentimes, the term we use is inalienable. They are part of human existence. Okay, that freedom, okay, is part of the human existence. So, in a nutshell, we have several freedoms. Okay, we have several rights, so to say, that have been spelled out in the Constitution. Okay, in Section 35 of the Nigerian Constitution as amended. Okay, the constitutions are clearly enumerated. Okay, we have the freedom of association, freedom of freedom to to life, freedom of movement. Okay, and several. All of these freedoms are grouped into the political right, economic right, cultural, social, and cultural right. Okay, we have all of these freedoms. However, we have limitations to this freedom. Okay, however, that's not our subject of discourse. When we say limitation, we mean yes, you have all of these rights. Okay, but there are situations whereby these rights are actually restricted. For example, there's when we had the Ebola outbreak. Okay, a curfew was passed, which was by so and so time nobody leaves. Now the reason is to contain this disease. That is what we call limitation. That freedom of movement is being contained. Okay, that freedom of movement is being contained. Okay, certain persons were quarantined within an environment to contain the disease. So that's an aspect. Then that's freedom of talking about fundamental human rights. Even United Nations Article 12, okay, clearly spells out or spelled out the fundamental human rights that every member state, every country that is a part of the United Nations must adhere to. They must adhere to all of those. If they do not, they will be referred to as a pariah state, and you may not have the time to extensively or exhaustively talk about that. Okay, let's just move on to the problems of maintaining the rule of law. Corruption. Corruption is the bait. I have always said this, that a country where